So, recognition of need, right? So, even if we have now planned, correct, planned for what to buy, okay, still purchasing or sourcing section needs another information, right? When to buy the product, how much to buy, right? Where it would be used, right? For example, here, so what is the definite need, what is required, how much is required, when it is required, right? So, all this information, correct? The requisition comes from some particular section or department in an organization, but how it comes, right? Can you think of, like, just imagine you are within an organization, and if you are working for a purchasing department, right? You are not going to use the product, okay? The user or the internal customer who would send this requisition belongs to some other section or function, right? So, how as supply manager I would get the request, right? How would I get the request? SAP or ERP, if I have a good workflow system, right? ERP, right? So, probably I would that some section would ping that I need this kind of product or part, right? And there can be some companies still who are, if they are not using ERP, they can send an email, right? Or they can have their own inbuilt workflow software, right? So, that is what I have told you, the activity is the recognition of need. Now, how we can make it more efficient and effective, okay? Now, imagine if supply manager has to get thousands of email every day, is it going to be an efficient process or efficient activity? No, okay. So, that is where there is a huge potential lies how we can make this procurement process an e-procurement process. We will talk about e-procurement tools soon, but this is the time to think about it, because we need a requisition with all these details, right? First of all, 100 emails, and in 100 emails, every email will have its own specifications, right? Different configurations, right? It's going to be a Hercules task, okay? So, now what companies do, how we can make it more standardized, okay? So, if the items are standardized, right, well and good. If I know this is the specification, this is the configuration, just go and place an order, isn't it, right? So, if it is standardized, it would be smooth. Avoid unusual orders and rush orders, like all of sudden last minute, correct? So, if that can be done, this activity can be smoothly undertaken, okay? So, what kind of requisition generally comes? It's a purchase or standard requisitions, right? What is standard requisition? So, requisition, right? So, there are so many sections, right? Every section, might be having many designations, right? Many employees, okay? But who is the authorized person in the unit, right? That should be known to the user department also and to the purchasing department also, right? So, countersigned by senior officer, the requisition is made, right? And whether it is ERP or standard format or any software, right? It does not matter. What matter is all this information point which you can read on the screen, right? So, what is the desired quantity, estimated price, schedule and receipt of material, okay? So, these are the standard requisition. If user department knows the specifications very clearly. Okay, so this is how they can actually have the standard requisition form this thing. And if this standard requisition, this part or product becomes a routine thing, then we call it traveling requisition. Okay, so traveling requisition, we can, now you see here we don't need to fill all this information. This is a routine ordering, right? We don't need to mention all the specifications. Those specifications can be embedded in the label or the barcode, right, which travels from requisition department. We don't need to give now all specifications. That can be saved in form of barcode or label, and we call that requisition as traveling. Now you are saving, right? Now it is another way of like becoming efficient. We just need to tell, like, maybe if there is a change in composition, then only we need to inform, right? So price or when to order, correct? So those things definitely one has to say, when to order, when you want that product, how much we want that product. Other details we don't need to repeat. This is for repeat and recurring items, right, which are required in bulk. Okay, so this is how one has to keep evolving, how we can make the requisitions, this thing. And if it is standard products, we can use bill of materials, right? If we are using our standard ERPs, enterprise resource planning, and we would authorize the supplier department, to see bill of material. We would just see that we want to make this many products, right? So this is, we want to manufacture say 100 products, we need material for that. Then this is a supplier's responsibility to look at bill of materials, use MRP schedules, and then source all those parts products, like, whatever are required. Okay. So similarly, right, traveling, otherwise, we can simply go by the end customer order. If some end customer I want particular product, through marketing they can channelize to purchasing directly, right? Routine ordering system, again within the bill of material we can have. This is also very important thing. Generally what happens, despite having automated system, all workflow in place, right, companies still feel they face discrepancies between what is reflected on the system and what is actual level of inventories they have in their premises. Okay. So many a times, along with the MRPs or our ERP, it is very important to do manual stock checks time to time. Okay, right? And there can be for new product development that we have all discussed. Okay, so this will, so now you see here, so when it is new product development, it really requires different kind of skill set, right? Knowledge on material, knowledge on potential suppliers. This is how, the skill set and, the job responsibilities within supply management are changing in view of this strategic requirements. Okay, so this is done, and this is how, purchase requisition forms look like. We have number, then date at which requisition came, the quantity, number, description, who filled it, signed, who authorized, right? All details will be in this form. This can be an online form, this can be a manual form, right? And sometimes if it is difficult to give the standard specification, many service requisitions, like, where we cannot have standard material, date and all, we go for statement of work, specify the work to be completed. Mostly our maintenance request, after sales service request, those kind of contracts, right? So service level expectations, right, when it is needed. So those are done by statement of work. Okay. So this is how we get the need, right? So the need requisition comes in this forms, right? But how this sections or departments, they describe the needs, right? So if suppose there is a company like semiconductor industry, the original equipment manufacturers, if they are manufacturing or assembling the mobiles or maybe some laptops, right? So all those uh, machines or mobile handsets, they need screens, correct? The screen also has to be assembled. Okay. Now we know that there are very famous players, right, who provides those screens, right? For example, LG is one of them, correct? Now if the user department would tell purchasing department that I want this brand to be assembled, I want this brand only, definitely with this specification, other than needs which has come in a requisition form, I need this particular brand into it, right? So it definitely becomes easier, right? So likewise, and if not brand, I would definitely say that this is the grade of material I want to use, this is the steel grade I need, So this is how description of what is to be sources within requisition is also important. Okay, when any user section is giving, they can give the request by market grade or industry standard, right? So they can say that, or it can be like, end customer demand, like a person like you and me say that I want the LG screen in my handset, right, or my laptop. So then you cannot do anything, you have to cater to the end consumer request. So this is the description, how this can be described, right? Can be market grade or industry standard, or it can be by brand, or it can be by specification, right, particular specification, or it can be performance characteristics, right? Suppose if end consumer would say that I want this service level, right, service level within within 1 hour of my request, the after sales service person should reach, right? So it can be by performance characteristics, right? Or I need service level of 95%, 95% of the time my request should be received within 1 hour, right? So if this kind of very strict or stringent performance characteristics are there, so this can also help in describing the need. Okay, so this is we have got the request, we have got the description of request, right? So now purchasing department knows for sure what my user department want, when it wants, what quantity wants, whether it is a standardized product or whether it is a customized product, whether it is a new product, whether it is a new service, what is the performance they are looking at, what is the service level they are looking for. Now this is clear. Now what next step? Right, now the real hunting would begin. Identify your supplier, right? What is my potential source, right? If it is an existing supplier, right, existing supplier, you might like to go for the existing routine supplier, the job is easier, right? But no, strategic sourcing personnel will always be looking for, some cost saving, some innovation, some creative way of automating, right? So they would certainly look for list of preferred supplier, they would go for past track record of known suppliers, right? And if the existing supplier would still be showing better performance, they would go by that. Otherwise, they have to go for new suppliers, right? Identify potential suppliers, right? And then After getting the pool of suppliers, they need to evaluate and qualify it, right. So, this thing can be done either by competitive bidding, right. Again, it depends, if the need is like, in so many, uh, it is required in volumes, okay, and there are many suppliers existing for that need, right. So, we need to go for competitive bidding, right. We have to ask for like, probably their bids, and then we would go for evaluation. However, if our need is like that, not many suppliers exist, right, very few supplier or maybe one or two exists, right, then can we negotiate, okay. So, then it depends on like, competitive bidding or negotiation, right. The suppliers are assessed, right, for all the performance indicators which companies would set, right. Now, while identifying, your potential source, right, while approaching the potential suppliers, how would you approach? How purchasing department would approach, okay. If my specifications are clear, right, and I know this pool of suppliers are good, they are doing good, right, or they are standard products, I am very clear this list of vendors can cater to my need, it is simply go for request for quotations, right. Send your specification and requirements in prescribed format and ask for quotation for supplier, right. So, because the need is clearly defined, I can use the quotation straight away for price comparison, right. It becomes easy. But if the needs are not clearly defined, right. So, and many a times we really want suppliers to bring innovation. We know roughly that we need this product, right. Can supplier like, provide their extra capabilities, or the suppliers are like, they are expert of their product which they are selling, right. They might suggest something different. So, in that case we go for request for proposals, because along with the price we need description of possible solutions which each supplier can suggest or propose, right. In this case we go for request for proposal. So, even one step back, we do not know what is our needs, okay. It is altogether new product I want to bring, or different or changed product, I would just gather information, and it is not a solicitation for business, just an information, okay. In that case we go for request for information, okay. And many a times if I am clear, I have now 4-5 suppliers, right. So, I really want this 4-5 suppliers, I have shortlisted them, now I think they should be ready for competitive bidding. I will just invite only those 4-5 suppliers to come and do bidding in a predefined time, pre-announced time, right. So, I will just send the bid specification package, okay. We will discuss about the details of how this bidding, competitive bidding happens in the subsequent sessions, right, probably with the technology and automation intervention, because these days we do this bidding using e-reverse auctions. We all know the famous auctions happening for paintings and arts, right, that is auction, right, where the high price buyers they can get buy the product, but we will be dealing with reverse auctions, right? As a buyer, I want to buy a product of lower prices, right? So, we would look for bids with lower prices, which will be done in reverse auction, and these days it is done electronically. So, we will describe and have a detailed discussion in that session, okay? So, a quick thing, request for quotation. When we know the needs, when we roughly know the needs, we get proposals along with request for proposal. Now, suppliers are qualified beforehand in request for quotation. I know this supplier would be able to meet my requirement, which is not possible in request for proposal. After analyzing the proposal only, we would get to know the capabilities of suppliers. Here the objective is cost saving, right? Because my specifications are clear, standard product, my intention will be price comparison tool so that I can save on cost. But in RFP, this is a proposal, I want to look for solutions, right? What are the possible solutions? Now, right, these days, you know, if you would see any company, right, if you see any company website, right, like the website given here, you will find that every company has now a separate section for their partners, right? Now, companies have evolved from defining suppliers as suppliers to partners, right? So, they said partners, click here, and if you would click there, you know, you will be able to see. I will show you one. Which would help us in making right. You see here, this is an Procter Gamble website, Procter and Gamble. So, here this is in their main website, you will be having partners website. Now, you see here, this is all dealing with most of the steps we have covered. This is, you see here, purchase order, invoices, PO numbers, okay. This is planning, specification, e-invoicing, supplier base management, invoice status, right. This is how everything is becoming, like, you know, e-oriented, right. This is what happens, okay. Now, after we have identified suppliers, right, we will go to the next phase. So, what is the next phase? Supplier selection, okay. So, how I am going to select supplier? I have now pool of suppliers, I have raised RFQs, RFPs, and I have got the vendors now. Now, how you are going to select, how you will evaluate, right? There should be some selection criteria, there should be some aggregate score, so that we can actually make the decision, and then we will start for bidding, right. So, after, you know, bidding, if you have selected your supplier, final selection, the supplier which would be on board, with that supplier we will propose purchase order. We will send the purchase order, which is a written or computer generated document to order from a selected supplier. So, now this purchase order, right, this is a kind of contract which would be signed between supplier and buyer. So, this purchase order is a very exhaustive document. This is the place, you know, where you need to put all the details, serial number, date, name, quantity, description, date of shipping direction, price, terms of payment, conditions governing the order, conflicting issues, right. You look here, this is the front page of purchase order, but it also needs a number of documents, like, you know, to verify all this thing, the GST number. So, all those things, like, you know, as a bundle, becomes a purchase order, right, and sent to the supplier. So anyone can initiate this purchase order, either supplier and buyer, but when both supplier and buyer they sign this purchase order, then it becomes a legal contract. Okay. So these are the other details which goes there, right? Provisions to guard the buyer from damage suits, right? Cancellation of orders, rejections, each and every minute details about the supplier buyer relationship goes into there, right? So this is a very, very important document. The routing is just an uh, uh, expediting or following up with purchase order, right? So once this purchase order is signed, okay, this becomes a legally bound contract, between supplier and buyer. Then only, the supplier would become on board. Very important point here is both the supplier and buyer premises, one has to make note that who is the authorized person to sign the purchase order from both sides. This is very, very important, right? The caution right here. Okay. So then once you have signed, your contract is formed. Okay. So these are the steps till onboarding the supplier. Once purchase order is signed, we have onboarded the vendor or supplier. Okay. So this is about steps. Rest of the steps we will do the next session. Okay. So you have got now understanding of what are the steps involved. Rest of the steps are also they are generally known to all of us. Okay. But here till purchase order is the stage when we finally select the supplier and onboard the supplier. Okay, right.